CGTN, China Global Television Network.
According to UN Habitat, up to 1.2 billion Africans will reside in urban centers by 2030. Urbanization has dramatically changed energy consumption patterns, water and sanitation needs, food security, and the mobility of human beings. And with these changes, Africa's cities face unprecedented challenges arising from the inability to cater to the demands of urban settlers. So, in what ways can governments on the continent harness ICT to make better decisions around resource allocation and service delivery? And how can urban areas reinvent themselves to become more safe, sustainable, and smart cities in Africa? I'm Penina Karibe. Welcome to Talk Africa. Now, urbanization is a powerful driver of economic development and social mobility, and has also been a catalyst for technological progress in cities globally. And as home to some of the fastest growing cities in the world, Africa is no exception. In May, Rwanda hosted the third Transform Africa Summit that focused on developing smart cities. The initiative aims at leveraging technology solutions to improve efficiency of cities by building partnerships with governments, academia, and private sector to increase its relevance in the ICT ecosystem. Joining me in studio to tell us more about the idea is Professor Alfred Omenya, Principal Researcher at EcoBuild Africa. Thanks for being here, Professor.
Yeah, thank you.
So, for starters, smart cities, sustainable cities, are they one and the same thing, or are they different?
In fact, the divide between sustainable cities and smart cities is very thin. I would say one is older, the other one is a bit younger. When we talk about sustainability, has been there a lot longer, and that came from Green Cities idea. That was the starting point. And as early as 2000 in Johannesburg World Summit for Sustainable Development, that was clearly spelled out that what constituted sustainable cities was largely about very sensitive use of resources in ways that then protect the resources from an urban perspective in ways that limit externalities, pollution and so on. When you're looking at smart cities, what you're actually focusing on is communicative cities, or intelligent cities, or responsive cities. The focus here is really about how you interface, how you use technology to be able to get responsiveness in infrastructure, in services, in governance, so that you can get participatory governance by people being able to feedback quite quickly to those who are actually the duty bearers, if you can actually call them that, and also socially within the city, that we can be able to then communicate quite quickly and say, look here, this part of town is bad, there's a new jazz festival happening elsewhere, and the core of this is really use of you can call it Internet of Things and ICT technologies to be able to both support infrastructure and services within the city, and simultaneously to be able to support governance and social aspects of the city.
Now, in that regard, right, Africa has experienced the highest urban growth in the last 2 decades at a rate of 3.5%.
Right.
The World Bank is projecting this to continue up till the year 2050.
Right. Is
this sustainable? Is there cause for alarm here?
I think there is cause for alarm. The rate is high, but the rate in itself is really not a problem. The problem is the nature of that urbanization. I mean, if you look, Africa is the least urbanized anyway, so we expect it to actually move a lot faster. But on the other hand, who are these people who are creating the urban push and the urban drive? Who are they actually? A lot of these people who are moving from rural areas who are not properly skilled, who then cannot be absorbed within the urban system. And the urban system itself is not properly, you don't have good planning, you don't have good housing, you don't have good jobs. So the people come in just to load the urban system. And as such, then the transport system collapses. You end up with huge slums and informal settlements because of lack of housing. The urban areas have not been planned to receive these people. In fact, in Africa, we don't even know whom they are. Some researchers do, like myself. But a lot of countries have no idea. Who are these people getting to urban areas? What skills do they have? What do they need? How do we then prepare as government? But having said that, urbanization is still a very good thing from a sustainability perspective. Yeah, because if, I'll give a very basic example. I mean, if you look at Nairobi occupies 0.1% of Kenya's landmass, 0.1% actually, and contributes to 70% of Kenya's GDP. So I was just musing that if we are two Nairobis, we'll only need to use 99.8% of Kenya's landmass to actually produce double what Kenya is producing currently.
Right.
Then the rest we can actually, lease to everybody and let wildlife proceed and so on. So urbanization is a good thing. The only problem is that the way it's happening in Africa, it is not properly managed, and as such is becoming a burden.
So let's talk about that then, because like you mentioned, it leads to the growth of slums and urban poverty and so forth and so on.
Right.
So what really is the solution?
We actually do have a solution, and I think part of the problem that we have is, I would say, insincere politics, poor governance, and terrible policies. The starting point, of course, is planning. But if you look at the way we plan our cities today in Africa, all over the place, Johannesburg, Lagos. In fact, I've just written a paper on Eco-Atlantic and on Konza City in Kenya that are meant to be smart cities. You find that these cities assume middle class and high-income people. But immediately you establish the city, the first people who arrive there are the unskilled and semi-skilled laborers. We need to start planning about people, not just about things. It's important to plan about things like roads, like water, like electricity. But we need to shift that plan to say, yes, who are these people? We need to plan for the poor. We need to plan for women. We need to plan for youth. We need to plan for the jobless. And we also need to look at urban economics, also not just about things. We must start asking ourselves, what sort of jobs are our urban areas creating? Are they relevant to the people who live in the urban area? For example, I mean, if I went to an informal settlement in Kenya today, and I was able to create some small street vending bits, local SMEs and stuff like that, I'm likely to absorb a lot of people in there. But on the other hand, if I go and create, a bank, I'll employ nobody. In fact, now that we're doing digital banking and so on. So I think part of the problem is mismatch between planning and policies and the people, and we are very many, and a number of us are actually quite poor, and we're not accommodated at all within our cities. So this is part of the problem.
Right. We've got congestion on the roads, congestion when you talk about housing, when you talk about sanitation, and especially when it comes to garbage. And I'm sure this is an area you're very familiar with. So what's the role of planning in urban development?
Yes, in fact, I want to highlight two issues around planning. We've started seeing a bit of planning happening in our cities in Africa, which is a good thing. But I need to highlight that planning is not about production of plans. Planning is about implementation of plans. Yes, so one of the first challenges that we have is that we don't have plans, or we have very poor plans. And then when we get to planning, which is very, very important, we must start saying, where do people live? Where do they work? Where do we want to dump our garbage? How do you want to manage that garbage process? How do we move people efficiently around the city? All these are planning questions. Planning is what forces us to rationally think about the limited resource that is the urban area and start saying, how do we use this landmass optimally? How do we move people from one part of the city optimally? How do we ensure there's no wastage in production? All those guys stuck in traffic jam is actually a waste to the economy. The billions that we lose every day by just having inefficient transport and so on. And through that, then of course a plan, for example, would say, look here, maybe it's more efficient to move people around the city using a light rail system rather than using matatus, which is the same in Kampala, which is the same in Dar es Salaam. So we need to actually start being serious about planning, and we need to start looking at planning as a mechanism for solving our problems and our issues. We should not look at planning as making of plans.
So in this regard, then, the digital age has ushered in, like you mentioned, just a new era of, urban innovation and entrepreneurship, and cities are using new technologies. I mean, we talked about mobile phones, for instance, to make urban performance more efficient and to enable new modes of coordination, decision-making, and participation. So my question is, isn't there a disconnect, though, between the speed at which Africa is embracing ICT and, say, things like internet penetration?
There is, and again, if you look at it, if you look at ICT, and to me that is a tragedy in the continent. That on one hand you actually see that a lot more people are embracing these particular technologies, but on the other hand, you see that the support for the infrastructure is hardly there. So that there's still parts of this country and parts of many countries of Africa where you just become analog immediately. You arrive in those places because you don't actually have proper broadband, that can enable you work real time, communicate real time, and so on.
Or it's not affordable.
Or it's not affordable
yes.
at all in the first instance. So you find that, yes, in terms of gadgets, the Africans have the gadgets. But in terms of the use of those gadgets, we use them for 5% of their potential. I should be able to use my smartphone for everything. I should be able to use it to navigate traffic. I should be able to use it to know that a pipe is broken somewhere. I should be able to use it to report to the local authority about a crowd that is doing something else elsewhere. I should be able to use it to check my accounts with the county government, and vice versa. The county government should be able to use those same smart technologies to figure out who's paying taxes, to figure out land users in different parts of town, to do all these sort of things. So again, we're totally underutilizing this. Policymakers are thinking Konza City, they're thinking Eco-Atlantic, they're thinking Pearl City, Ghana. They're thinking about huge mega urban areas that are smart. But in fact, smart cities can be applied to anything, to any urban formation, because it helps improve the efficiencies of these urban areas, actually. So you do not need to actually just have an ICT city for the city to be smart. You can actually start with Nairobi and start asking yourself, what aspects of Nairobi can we start making smart? You can actually start with existing cities and then bring in smart infrastructure, and then of course with the proper ICT penetration and the net, and then where we have gaps in the law or regulation, then we need to put those in place, and then we need to get government to incentivize it, because government must lead from the front, and it can't just be one city that they started with. It must be incremental effort in all the cities, because at the end of the day, what you're talking about is about urban efficiency, and what we're talking about is about urban productivity, so that we can deal with these issues of poor cities in the continent and poor citizens within the continent.
Great insights. Professor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We had here in studio Professor Alfred Omenya, Principal Researcher at EcoBuild Africa. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have more insights into the emergence of smart cities in Africa. Stay with us. Welcome back to Talk Africa. Now, as we heard earlier, Rwanda hosted the third edition of Transform Africa, a summit that brings together different players from across Africa and the globe to fast-track the continent's digital transformation agenda. It aimed to establish new ways of shaping, accelerating, and sustaining Africa's ongoing digital revolution. And on the sidelines of the event, I sat down with some of the delegates to find out how they plan to achieve this. Joining us to discuss the idea of smart cities further is, on my extreme left, Henrik Molgard, the Vice President of Global Sales Bluetown. And next to him is Peter Wallet, the Program Coordinator at UNESCO. And right next to me is Pierre Kayitana, Acting Chief Operating Officer, Rwanda Online Limited. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Pierre, I'm going to start with you because Kigali is the host city for Transforming Africa Summit. And break it down for us, the idea of smart cities. What exactly is it?
Yes, the concept started back in the years about 10, 12 years ago, when we were discussing Connect Africa here in Kigali at the Kigali Serena Hotel. That was the very first ICT conference for Africa taking place in Kigali. So at the time, the issue was about infrastructure. There were no enough infrastructure to host to develop ICT in Africa. Then when we came back in 2013 for Transform Africa, we noticed that Africa is now connected, so it's about transforming the lives of people. And transforming the lives of people, it's making them smart by having smart infrastructure, smart schools, smart citizens, smart services, and all this hosted in a city makes what we call the concept of smart city. Our Minister of ICT Rwanda presented the blueprint of smart African cities, and this is an important document that will define basically the model of what it means to be an African smart city.
Right. Peter, how does UNESCO tie in with this idea of smart cities?
Well, UNESCO is focusing, one of its main projects here in the country of Rwanda is infusing ICTs into education to transform Africa. So I think it sort of fits in is that UNESCO recognizes the priority of the government of Rwanda in using ICTs to enhance education in the primary and secondary and tertiary education systems. So UNESCO is trying to leverage and build capacity at many levels, training teachers to use ICTs in the classroom, so enhancing the skills, but also using ICTs to also enhance teaching and learning itself in the classroom. Also in terms of, it's important to build capacity in the universities in bringing traditional instruction online, as that is a government priority in terms of bringing about open and distance education learning. And the third main thing that UNESCO is involved with is helping policymakers and learn about knowledge societies. And I think this is really this is where it ties into smart cities, and there's that obvious link. So, but UNESCO's role essentially is about reinforcing the education system, enhancing ICTs to help students and citizens in general sort of acquire those skills and for 21st century skills for the future.
Henrik, why is Global Sales Bluetown very keen on this idea?
Basically in Bluetown we are a global technology company, and we are focusing on connectivity in rural areas based on Wi-Fi. And you cannot have a smart city without connectivity, and that is basically our stronghold. We are also very focused about supporting the SDGs, and many of those SDGs are about education and equality of gender and equality of rights. And we believe that with infrastructure and ability also comes better life, and this is one of the ways that we think we can support this initiative.
Right. So I'm hearing a lot of connectivity, education as well from UNESCO. And when you look at the capital cities in Africa, there's a myriad of problems. There's poor housing, lack of water, electricity, and a lot more, of course, without enough solutions, a lot of people would say. So we're looking at technology to create these solutions. Pierre, is this the silver bullet? How do we achieve this using the idea of smart cities?
Using the idea of smart city means that we can have many other society problems, but we can be behind on a number of things. But with technology, we have equal opportunities. What in technology we call leapfrogging. We might be behind on a number of things, but with technology we can still be ahead of other countries. Last time in Transform Africa was the launch of the first 4G on mobile in Rwanda, ahead of many developed countries in the world, even ahead of some European countries and in other continents. Same thing with technology. We don't have to wait so long to create smart cities in Africa and wait that we resolve a number of problems. Some of the pain points, for example, the company I'm working for, Rwanda Online, we're trying to resolve is citizens are walking long distance to go and apply for services at different government agencies. Now we have put up different platforms via mobile or online where they can apply for services and pay for them online and even receive them online. So the citizens are becoming smarter, ahead of many other big cities in the world. and we can actually sell the concept of smart city to the rest of the world right from here.
Peter, coming to you, you talked about UNESCO and the purpose to build or create a knowledgeable public. And of course, the beauty about Africa is a majority of people have mobile networks, which have internet, of course. But then how does education tie in with technology when we talk about solving some of these challenges we're encountering?
Well, I think the fact that mobile phones have become so readily available and the property of so many people is something that needs to be tapped, because and this is part of what UNESCO is trying to accomplish in Rwanda with its capacity building, is we are considering mobile phones as an instrument, something that can be used to disseminate information for communication reasons, and another tool amongst many to enhance the educational system in a way. So, I mean, clearly, I always want to be careful that ICTs are again, they're a tool that can be used in the education system by teachers, by learners. They are by no means a solution to everything. We know that traditional education, well-designed instruction, good teaching, well-trained teachers, these things really, really matter. And these things will always remain at the core of good quality education. However, of course, with the changes in Rwanda is ahead of the curve in terms of the adoption of ICT, internet, and compared to many other countries in the region. So it is something that ought to be tapped and ought to be, for lack of a better word, exploited to enhance the possibilities in the education system that teachers and learners can take advantage of.
So taking it forward, Pierre, we're talking about enhancing capacity, but what are the challenges that you foresee to make smart cities a reality?
Smart cities is, we still have an issue on infrastructure, but the Rwandan government has invested a lot in infrastructure. So the part remaining now is education and awareness. Although all these platforms are being deployed, all this infrastructure are being invested in, citizens still need to be educated and be aware that they exist and that they can make their lives easier. So the most part is to also invest in that daily training and daily follow-up with people, and that also requires a lot of time and investment. For example, with what we do, we have tried to simplify application for government services online for everyone. However, you still find people still need someone who can help them do it for them. So we had to create and deploy a network of agents who support the citizen as they apply for different services. Although some of the services are already made very in a way that is improved, so that they don't need internet, they just need a basic mobile phone and apply via USSD on their own mobile phone. But we need to employ thousands of agents to be deployed across the country, supporting them through the application process. The other thing is the cost, the cost of digitization and the cost of delivering service, and also the cost of internet and other services that citizens need to be able to embrace the concept of smart cities. For some of them still feel that the service providers are still very expensive for the market, and through dialogue and partnerships, these costs are relatively coming down as we move.
Peter, let me draw your attention to something that the former Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, Abdoulaye Diané, once said, that many of the African countries devote considerable lower funding to homegrown innovations. So a lot of African governments preferring foreign innovations as opposed to local innovations. UNESCO works very closely with African governments. Do you think there's enough political goodwill to actualize the idea of smart cities?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think UNESCO is partnering in particular with the Ministry of Education, of course, and also by default the Rwanda Education Board. The industry needs to be further developed, of course, but the will is there. And what I'm not witnessing is a reliance necessarily on foreign knowledge, foreign technology. I see a pragmatic approach, and UNESCO supports the building of the capacity of the sectors themselves. So that idea is sort of inconsistent with UNESCO's vision of development of ICT within the sector of education.
Henrik, where do you see the role of the private sector?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think actually the role of the private sector will be very important, I hope, and I believe so as well. What I was thinking about earlier also is the importance of for-profit initiatives in smart cities, and also in general in this global megatrend of connecting the world. I think there's a bad experience about this, not NGO, but non-profit projects. I seem to hear that when the funding flows out, the project dies. So I would very much recommend that governments and other super over country bodies like UN are focusing a little bit more on the for-profit organizations, and that's mainly the private sector. That's my belief.
Finally, final question to you, Pierre. Rwanda has been one of those African countries known to embrace ICT, and I want to know if we have good examples of homegrown innovations that have created solutions along the concepts of smart cities here in Rwanda.
Yes, indeed. Our president is a digital president. His Excellency President Paul Kagame has really, not only for Rwanda but for his counterpart in Africa, been discussing how African countries can really embrace technology in improving the lives of people. And back in Rwanda, they have different initiatives that have been embraced by the population in general. Rwanda Online, Irembo is a very good example on how citizens in Kigali and in Rwanda are very smart, applying and paying online. The mobile financial sector is also growing. One of the fastest growing mobile financial services are here. This is not a solution that was created in Rwanda, but actually being used in Rwanda and showing a lot of growth potential. And then I will say that in Kigali there are different initiatives. There's innovation in the transport, there's innovation in service delivery, and there's innovation in public Wi-Fi, and making sure that everything goes online, and it's all done in the spirit of making sure that there's citizen satisfaction and also improving the service delivery that is offered to the citizen.
All right, we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much for joining us. From my extreme left, Henrik Molgard, Vice President of Global Sales, Bluetown. And next to him, Peter Wallet, the Program Coordinator of UNESCO. And next to me, Pierre Kayitana, the Chief Operating Officer, Acting, Rwanda Online Limited. That's all we have time for this week, but remember, you can join the conversation online through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And do join us again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Penina Karibe, it's goodbye.